At my daughter's birthday, my in-laws hissed, "You are just a leech," then karma struck. My name is Layla, and I am 32 years old. The day my daughter Zoe turned 5 was supposed to be filled with laughter cake and tiny hands covered in frosting. Instead, it became the day my in-laws cornered me behind the party decorations and called me a leech in front of everyone. They thought they were putting me in my place. They had no idea they were opening the door for karma to walk right in. Before we dive into this story, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below, and if this story resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to join our community. Now let me take you back to where everything began. I met Marcus at a small coffee shop in downtown Chicago when I was 25 years old. He was 28, sitting alone by the window, with a book I had been wanting to read for months. We started talking about literature then life, and before I knew it, 3 hours had passed. He walked me to the train station, and I remember thinking, this man was different from anyone I had ever met. I grew up in a modest household in Ohio. My father worked as an electrician, often coming home with calloused hands and tired eyes, but always with a smile for me and my younger brother. My mother was a nurse who worked night shifts at the local hospital and still managed to make us breakfast every morning before school. We were not wealthy by any measure, but we had enough. More importantly, we had each other. After high school, I scraped together scholarships and student loans to attend a design school in Chicago. I graduated with a degree in interior design and a mountain of debt that felt like it would take a lifetime to pay off. But I was determined. I landed a job at a small design firm making just enough to cover rent and my monthly loan payments with barely anything left over. Marcus never mentioned his family during those first few months of dating. He told me about his job, his love for hiking, and his dream of one day opening a community center for underprivileged kids. I fell in love with his kindness, his quiet strength, and the way he listened to me like every word I said mattered. It was not until we had been together for 6 months that he finally invited me to meet his parents. He seemed nervous that day, which was unusual for him. He kept adjusting his collar and checking his watch as we drove out of the city toward the suburbs. When we pulled into the driveway of his childhood home, I understood why he had been anxious. The house was enormous. It sat on several acres of manicured lawn, with columns flanking the front entrance like something out of a magazine. I remember gripping my purse, suddenly acutely aware that it was not a designer brand, and wondering if anyone would notice. Marcus squeezed my hand before we walked in. His father, Richard, greeted us at the door. He was tall, with silver hair, and the kind of posture that suggested he was used to commanding rooms. He shook my hand firmly but briefly, his eyes scanning me the way one might inspect merchandise. His mother, Diane, appeared behind him in a cream-colored blouse and pearls. She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. We sat in their formal living room, and Diane began asking questions. Where did I go to school? What did my parents do for work? Did I have any savings or investments? I answered honestly, not realizing until later that I was being evaluated. Each answer seemed to confirm something for her, and not in a good way. Then there was Tiffany, Marcus's younger sister. She was 22 at the time, fresh out of an expensive private university, and living off her parents' generosity. She looked me up and down when we were introduced, then smirked at my handbag. "Is that vintage?" she asked, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "No," I replied. "It is just from a department store." "Oh," she said, drawing out the word. "How quaint." Marcus apologized profusely on the drive home. He told me his family could be difficult, and that they just needed time to warm up to me. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. I loved him, and I thought love would be enough to bridge whatever gap existed between my world and theirs. We dated for another 1.5 years before Marcus proposed. I said yes without hesitation, envisioning a future filled with partnership and mutual respect. I thought once his family saw how much we loved each other, they would accept me. The engagement brought new challenges. Diane insisted on taking control of the wedding planning, and to keep the peace, I agreed to hold the ceremony at the country club her family had belonged to for generations. She vetoed my choice of flowers, saying lilies were too common. She dismissed my preferred caterer as not up to standard. She even criticized my wedding dress for being too simple, though she phrased it as wanting me to look my best on my special day. I compromised on nearly everything. Marcus was caught in the middle, and I did not want to make things harder for him. I told myself it was just one day, and what mattered was our life together afterward. On our wedding day, Richard stood to give a toast. He raised his glass and said words I will never forget. "We welcome Layla into our family today," he announced, and we hope she will learn to live up to the standards of this household." The guests laughed politely, assuming it was a joke. I forced myself to smile, even as something inside me cracked. Marcus patted my hand under the table, but said nothing. I told myself it would get better once we were married, once I had proven myself to them. But proving myself to the family I had married into turned out to be an impossible task. The first year of marriage was a strange mixture of happiness and quiet disappointment. Marcus and I loved each other deeply. On the weekends we would cook together, take long walks along the lakefront, and talk about our dreams late into the night. In those private moments, everything felt perfect. But then there were the visits to his parents' house. We went every Sunday for dinner, a tradition Diane insisted upon. Each visit felt like walking into a courtroom where I was always the defendant. Diane had a key to our apartment because Richard had purchased it for us as a wedding gift. This generosity came with strings attached. Diane would let herself in unannounced, critiquing the way I organized the kitchen cabinets or questioning why there were dishes in the sink. She would open our refrigerator and comment that I was buying the wrong brands. She would run her finger along surfaces checking for dust. I mentioned to Marcus that perhaps we could change the locks, but he looked pained. "She is just trying to help," he said. "She means well." I wanted to ask him if he truly believed that, but I did not want to put him in an impossible position. He was trying to balance loyalty to his parents with his love for me, and I could see the strain it caused him. Meanwhile, my career at the design firm was going nowhere. The company was small, and there was little room for advancement. My salary barely increased over the years, and I watched my student loans accrue interest faster than I could pay them down. Every time Diane asked what I contributed to the household, I felt smaller. When I discovered I was pregnant, joy and terror mingled in equal measure. Marcus was ecstatic. He spun me around the living room and immediately began talking about baby names and nursery themes. I was thrilled too, but a part of me worried about what his parents would say. Diane's reaction was predictable. She took over. She found the best obstetrician in the city, someone who had delivered babies for several prominent families. She compiled lists of approved baby names, all of them traditional family names from their side. She showed up at our apartment with paint swatches and furniture catalogs declaring that she would handle the nursery design, since, as she put it, "You have enough on your plate just growing the baby." I let her steamroll over me for months. I was exhausted from pregnancy, and from the constant battle of trying to assert myself only to be dismissed. But when it came to naming our daughter, I drew a line. I wanted to name her Zoe. The name meant life to me. It was simple, beautiful, and full of hope. Diane wanted Elizabeth after her own mother. She argued that family tradition was more important than my personal preferences. For the first time, I refused to back down. I told Marcus that if I could not have a say in my own child's name, then I did not know what I was doing in this family. He saw how much it meant to me and supported my choice. Zoe, it was. Diane never forgave me for that small rebellion. From that day forward, her coldness toward me deepened into something sharper. After Zoe was born, Diane appeared at our apartment daily. She would take Zoe from my arms without asking, declaring that the baby needed to be held differently. She criticized the way I breastfed, suggesting I was not producing enough milk. She questioned my decision to use cloth diapers instead of disposable ones, calling it unsanitary. Every aspect of my mothering was scrutinized and found lacking. I was drowning. Between the sleepless nights, the hormonal changes, and the constant criticism, I felt myself disappearing. I talked to Marcus about it, and he tried to set boundaries with his mother, but his attempts were half-hearted. He would suggest to Diane that perhaps she could call before visiting, and she would agree, then show up unannounced the very next day. When Zoe was 6 months old, I made a decision that would change everything. I quit my job at the design firm. On the surface, it was because I wanted to be home with my daughter. That was true, but it was not the whole truth. The real reason was that I needed to breathe. I needed space away from a job that was going nowhere, and away from the pressure of performing both there and at home. But quitting also gave Diane exactly what she wanted: evidence that I was not contributing financially to the household. You see, Diane said at dinner the week after I resigned, "Some women simply are not cut out for working. It is perfectly acceptable to admit you need Marcus to take care of you." I bit my tongue so hard, I tasted blood. But something happened in those quiet hours when Zoe napped. I found myself sketching again. Interior design had been my passion before it became my disappointing career. Without the constraints of a small firm with limited clients, my creativity bloomed. I started designing rooms in my head, then on paper, then digitally. One night while Zoe slept and Marcus worked late, I created an Instagram account for my designs. I did not use my real name. I did not tell anyone about it. It was just for me a secret garden where I could nurture something entirely my own. Within weeks, I had followers. People commented on my designs asking where they could get similar looks. A few reached out asking if I did consultations. I quoted them prices almost as a joke, expecting them to disappear. They did not. My side project grew quietly but steadily. I registered a business, hired my first remote employee to help with administrative tasks, and began taking on clients. Everything happened behind closed doors. Marcus never noticed the late nights because he was often working late himself. Diane never suspected because she had already decided I was incapable of anything productive. By the time Zoe turned 3, my company had generated over $200,000 in revenue. By her 4th birthday, that number had more than tripled. I had a team of 6 working remotely clients in multiple states, and a reputation that was growing rapidly in design circles. I never told a soul in Marcus's family. Part of me wanted to wait until the right moment, though I could never quite define what that moment would look like. Another part of me, the part that had been diminished by years of criticism, wanted to keep this success locked away where no one could take it from me. And if I am being completely honest, there was also a part of me that was building an escape route, just in case. The year before Zoe turned 5 was particularly difficult. Diane's remarks had evolved from subtle digs to outright insults, and Richard had begun participating more actively in the campaign to remind me of my place. Thanksgiving dinner at their house was always an ordeal, but that year it reached new depths. The entire family gathered around the massive dining table in the formal dining room. Crystal glinted under the chandelier. Silver utensils gleamed against white china. And I sat there smiling so hard, my cheeks ached, praying the evening would end quickly. Tiffany was in rare form that night. She had been working at their father's construction company for a year, though working was a generous term. From what Marcus had mentioned, she mostly showed up late, left early, and spent her time browsing expensive boutiques during lunch hours. Still, Richard had recently promoted her to some vague management position, and she was eager to brag. "I have been learning so much about the business," Tiffany announced, swirling wine in her glass. "Daddy says I have a natural talent for leadership." "That is wonderful," Diane beamed. "It is so important to contribute to the family enterprise." Then she turned to me, her smile sharpening. "And what about you, Layla? Still at home watching television all day?" "I am raising your granddaughter," I replied, keeping my voice even. "That is a full-time job." Diane laughed, a tinkling sound that held no warmth. "Taking care of one child is not a job, dear. It is what any woman does naturally. Richard works 12 hours a day to provide for this family. Marcus puts in just as much effort. Some of us simply contribute more than others." Richard nodded gravely, as if this were profound wisdom. "You should be grateful, Layla. Not everyone gets to live comfortably without lifting a finger." I looked at Marcus. He was staring at his plate, pushing mashed potatoes around with his fork. He did not lift his eyes, did not say a word in my defense. The silence that followed was worse than the insults. A few months later, Diane celebrated her 60th birthday with an extravagant party at a restaurant so exclusive it did not even have a sign outside. The guest list included business associates, society friends, and family members, who all seemed to possess the same ability to look down their noses at anyone they deemed lesser. I had spent weeks searching for the perfect gift. Using money from my secret business account, I purchased a hand-painted silk scarf from a small artisan boutique. It was elegant, unique, and more expensive than anything I had ever bought for anyone. I wrapped it carefully and presented it to Diane with genuine hope that perhaps this gesture would build a small bridge between us. She opened it in front of everyone. For a moment her fingers traced the delicate fabric, and I thought I saw appreciation flicker in her eyes. Then she looked at me. "This is lovely," she said slowly. "Did Marcus help you pick this out?" "No," I said. "I chose it myself." Her eyebrows rose. "And you paid for it with your own money?" "Yes." Diane glanced at Richard, then back at me, her lips curving into that smile I had come to dread. "That is very thoughtful, dear. although I must say, it is rather sweet that you are using money your husband earns to buy me gifts. Some might call that taking from one pocket to put in another, but I appreciate the sentiment." Laughter rippled through the table. Tiffany leaned toward her boyfriend, whispering something that made him smirk. I sat there, heat rising to my cheeks, unable to form words. Marcus reached for my hand under the table, but even that small gesture felt hollow. He had not spoken up. He never spoke up. On the drive home, I finally broke. "Why do you never defend me?" I asked, my voice cracking. "They humiliate me constantly, and you just sit there like you do not even notice." Marcus gripped the steering wheel tighter. "What do you want me to do, Layla? Start a fight with my parents at my mother's birthday party? I want you to say something. Anything. I am your wife. Does that not mean anything to you? Of course it does. I love you. But my family is just... they are the way they are. You have to understand I have known them my whole life. I cannot just change how they behave. What about how they make me feel? Does that matter?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I am sorry," he finally said. "I will try to talk to them." But he did not. He never did. That night after Marcus fell asleep, I sat in the bathroom with the door locked and cried. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked tired, beaten down, hollowed out by years of being told she was not enough. I made a decision then. I opened a new bank account, one connected only to my business. From that point forward, every dollar of profit would go there. It was not about planning to leave. It was about knowing I could. Zoe's 5th birthday became my mission. I wanted to create something perfect for her, something that came entirely from me, untouched by Diane's controlling hands or Richard's condescending money. I spent 2 months planning. Zoe loved flowers and butterflies, and everything magical about nature, so I chose an enchanted garden theme. I found a small cafe on the outskirts of the city that had a beautiful garden patio. It was not fancy by the standards of Marcus's family, but it was charming and warm and absolutely perfect for a children's party. I designed the invitations myself, featuring watercolor butterflies and delicate vines. I ordered a custom cake from a bakery Zoe and I had discovered together, a 3-tier creation decorated with edible flowers. I hired a face painter and a woman who did balloon animals shaped like garden creatures. Every detail was intentional, every choice made with love. I invited 30 guests, friends of Zoe from her preschool, a few of my own friends who had stayed loyal despite the distance my marriage had created, and of course, family. Marcus was supportive throughout the planning process, though I could tell he was nervous about his parents' reaction to the venue. "They are used to more formal settings," he said gently one evening. "This is not about them," I replied. "It is about Zoe." He did not argue further. The day of the party arrived, and I woke early to make sure everything was perfect. The spring weather cooperated beautifully, with sunshine filtering through soft clouds and a gentle breeze that carried the scent of blooming flowers. Zoe was beside herself with excitement, spinning in her new dress and chattering about which of her friends would arrive first. We got to the venue an hour early to set up. I was arranging the last of the decorations when I heard tires on gravel. Looking up, I saw Richard's black sedan pulling into the parking area. They were 30 minutes early. Diane emerged from the car in a dress more appropriate for a charity gala than a 5-year-old's garden party. Richard followed in pressed slacks and a sport coat. Tiffany trailed behind with her latest boyfriend, a young lawyer named Preston, who looked bored before the party had even begun. Diane surveyed the venue with an expression of barely concealed distaste. She walked past the balloon arch I had spent an hour creating and stood in the center of the patio, turning slowly. "This is it," she said. "This is where you are hosting my granddaughter's birthday." I straightened my spine. Zoe loves it here. She picked it out herself. Diane exchanged a glance with Richard. "We could have reserved the club," she said. "The Hendersons just celebrated their granddaughter's birthday there. It was lovely, proper." "This is lovely," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "And it is what Zoe wanted." Richard stepped forward. "We are happy to contribute, Layla. It is not too late to move things somewhere more appropriate. I can make a few calls. The party is in an hour. We are staying here." Diane sighed dramatically, then began walking around the space. She picked up one of my handmade centerpieces, examined it, then set it down in a different spot. "Let me just rearrange a few things," she said. "Some of these placements do not make sense." I wanted to scream. Instead, I turned away and focused on Zoe, who was obliviously happy examining the garden flowers with wide-eyed wonder. Tiffany materialized beside me, phone in hand. She was photographing the venue with the air of someone documenting a disaster. "Quaint," she said, echoing her comment from years ago. "Very rustic Instagram." I did not respond. Guests began arriving, and soon the garden was filled with children's laughter. Parents milled about, chatting and watching their kids run between the flower beds. For a while, I allowed myself to relax. Zoe was radiant, playing with her friends, showing them the butterfly bushes, and proudly pointing out the cake I had ordered specially for her. But I noticed Diane circulating among the guests, inserting herself into every conversation. She introduced herself as grandmother of the birthday girl, as if I were not standing 10 feet away. She corrected parents on where to sit, redirected the face painter to a different location she deemed more appropriate, and loudly criticized the appetizers for being too ethnic. They were Mediterranean dips chosen because they were Zoe's favorites. Richard held court with the fathers, dropping mentions of his company, his country club membership, and his recent vacation to Monaco. He did not ask anyone about themselves. He only talked about himself. Marcus drifted between groups, looking increasingly uncomfortable. He caught my eye once and gave me a helpless shrug, as if to say, "What can I do?" I should have known something worse was coming. Diane and Richard had been huddled together for the past 15 minutes, speaking in low voices and occasionally glancing in my direction. When I went to retrieve the birthday candles from my bag, which I had left near a trellis covered in climbing roses, they followed. The trellis was at the edge of the garden, partially hidden from the main party area by a screen of tall flowers. I had set my bag there deliberately, wanting to keep the practical items out of sight. I did not expect company. I was digging through the bag, searching for the candles, when I heard footsteps behind me. Turning, I found myself face to face with Diane and Richard. They stood shoulder to shoulder, blocking my path back to the party. "We need to talk," Diane said. Her voice was low, but intense, the kind of tone that suggested she had been rehearsing this moment. Richard stood slightly behind her, his arms crossed over his chest like an enforcer waiting to step in if needed. "Can it wait?" I asked. "I need to get the candles for the cake." "No," Richard said. "It cannot wait." I felt my heart rate increase, but I kept my expression neutral. "Fine. What is it?" Diane took a step closer. "We have been patient with you, Layla. We have welcomed you into our family, given you a home, provided for you and Zoe. And what have you given us in return?" I did not respond. I knew better than to engage with rhetorical questions designed to trap me. "Nothing," Diane continued, answering herself. "You have given us absolutely nothing. You sit in that apartment we paid for, eating food bought with money. Marcus earns wearing clothes purchased on his credit card, and you contribute nothing." "I contribute," I started to say, but Richard cut me off. "Staying home is not contributing. Any woman can stay home. What we are talking about is real value, Layla. Financial value. Career value. You had opportunities and you wasted them. Now you just coast along, living off our son." The word hit me like a slap. Living off. Diane nodded, her eyes glittering. "That is exactly what you are. A leech. Sucking resources from this family without putting anything back in." I felt my hands trembling, but forced myself to remain still. "I am Zoe's mother. I am Marcus's wife." "Please," Diane scoffed. "You trapped Marcus with that pregnancy. He was going places before he met you. He could have married someone with connections, someone who would enhance his career and our family's standing. Instead, he chose you, and look what it got him. A wife who cannot even hold down a job." Richard leaned forward. "We have spoken to our attorneys. If Marcus comes to his senses and decides to end this marriage, you will receive nothing. The apartment is in our name. The cars are in our name. You will leave with exactly what you brought into this family, which is to say nothing at all." The cruelty of their words crashed over me in waves. Every insecurity I had ever felt, every doubt that had kept me up at night, was being reflected back at me through their contempt. Diane delivered the final blow. "So I suggest you learn your place. Stop pretending you belong in this family. Stop making decisions about our granddaughter without consulting us, and stop embarrassing yourself with these pathetic attempts at independence. You are nothing without Marcus, and nothing without us." I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. My throat had closed. My vision was blurring with tears I refused to let fall. They stood there waiting for me to crumble, to apologize, to admit they were right. Then I heard a gasp. I turned to see Harper, my best friend, standing just beyond the trellis. Her face was pale with shock. Behind her, 3 other mothers from Zoe's school stood frozen, clearly having heard everything. I realized then that Diane and Richard, so consumed with delivering their tirade, had not noticed how their voices had carried. The trellis was not as isolated as I had thought. The flower screen muffled sound in one direction, but not the other. "Mommy." The small voice cut through the horror of the moment. Zoe had followed the other mothers, curious about where I had gone. She stood at Harper's side, looking up at me with wide eyes. "Mommy, why are you crying?" I had not realized tears were streaming down my face. I wiped them quickly, but the damage was done. My daughter had seen me broken by her grandparents. I looked at Marcus, who had finally appeared, drawn by the commotion. His face was ashen. He looked at his parents, then at me, then at the small crowd of witnesses. "Mom, Dad," he said quietly, "this is not the place for this. Not the place." That was all he said. Not a denial, not a defense, just a suggestion that they should have chosen a better time to destroy me. Something shifted inside me in that moment. The part of me that had been making excuses for him, believing he would eventually stand up for me, simply stopped. I looked at Zoe, at her worried little face, and I made a decision. I was not going to let her see me break. I was not going to let her remember her 5th birthday as the day her mother was humiliated and did nothing about it. I knelt down to her level. "Sweetie, Mommy is okay. These are happy tears because I love you so much. Can you go with Miss Harper for just a minute? I have something important to say to everyone." Zoe nodded, and Harper, bless her, immediately took her hand and led her toward the dessert table, distracting her with promises of picking the first flower from the cake. I stood up and walked past Diane and Richard, past the trellis into the center of the garden, where most of the guests had gathered. The noise of conversations died down as people noticed my tear-stained face, the tension radiating from my body. "Excuse me," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "I have something I would like to say." Marcus took a step toward me. "Layla, maybe we should just—" "No," I interrupted. "I have been quiet for 5 years. I am done being quiet." I turned to face my in-laws, who had followed me, and now stood at the edge of the crowd, their expressions caught between outrage and uncertainty. For the past 5 years I've been told I'm worthless. I have been called lazy, ungrateful, and a leech. I have been reminded constantly that I contribute nothing to this family. Diane's face flushed. "Layla, this is hardly appropriate." I continued as if she had not spoken. What my in-laws do not know, because I never told them, is that I have spent the past 4 years building my own company, a design company that I started from nothing, that I grew in the hours between midnight and dawn while caring for my daughter and enduring their criticism. I pulled out my phone and opened the business account app. Last year, my company generated over $800,000 in revenue. I employ 10 people. I have clients in 14 states. And I did all of that without asking anyone in this family for a single cent. The garden was completely silent. Diane's mouth had fallen open. Richard's face had gone from red to white. "You called me a leech," I said, looking directly at Diane. "You said I would leave this marriage with nothing. Let me be very clear. I could buy that apartment you keep holding over my head with cash. I could pay for my daughter's education through graduate school. I do not need your money, your approval, or your permission." Harper stepped forward. "I can confirm everything Layla just said. I am her accountant. I have watched her build this business from the ground up. She is one of the most driven, capable women I have ever known." The mothers from Zoe's school were nodding, looking at Diane and Richard, with expressions that had shifted from shock to disgust. Tiffany tried to salvage the situation. "She is obviously lying. There is no way she—" But she was interrupted by a sound. Diane's phone was ringing. She glanced at the screen and something in her face changed. She stepped away to answer it, and I saw her body go rigid. "Richard," she said, her voice strained. "We need to go. Now." Richard looked confused. "What are you talking about?" Diane showed him something on her phone screen. Even from where I stood, I could see the color drain from his face. They exchanged words I could not hear, but their body language told the story clearly enough. Something was very, very wrong. Richard grabbed Tiffany's arm. "We are leaving." Preston, Tiffany's boyfriend, looked bewildered. "But the party is not over." Now Richard barked. They left in a flurry of expensive clothing and barely concealed panic. The black sedan peeled out of the parking lot, leaving confused guests in its wake. I did not know what had happened. I would not learn the full truth until later. But in that moment, watching them flee from my daughter's birthday party, I felt something I had not felt in years. Peace. The days that followed the party were a whirlwind of revelations and decisions. Harper filled in the gaps for me over coffee 2 days later. Apparently, the call Diane had received was from Richard's business partner. The FBI had contacted their company regarding allegations of tax fraud and embezzlement. An investigation that had been quietly building for months had finally reached the point of formal inquiry. Richard had been skimming from contracts underreporting income and using company accounts for personal expenses for years. The amounts were staggering, millions of dollars that should have gone to taxes, to employees, to legitimate business operations. The karma I had joked about was not a joke at all. It was an investigation that had been building while they built their case against me. Within 2 months, Richard was formally charged. The company was frozen pending investigation. Assets were seized. The country club membership they prized so highly was suspended. The black sedan was repossessed. Diane had to sell the house. The mansion I had once felt so intimidated by was put on the market at a fraction of its value because they needed liquid cash for legal fees. They moved into a modest apartment in a less fashionable part of town, a cruel irony given how they had judged my upbringing. Tiffany lost her job because there was no longer a company to employ her. For the first time in her 28 years, she had to actually apply for work, compete with other candidates, and face rejection. I heard through mutual acquaintances that it was not going well. Marcus and I had a long conversation the night after the party. He apologized, truly. Apologized for the first time in our marriage. He admitted he had failed me by not standing up to his parents. He acknowledged that he had prioritized avoiding conflict over protecting his wife. I told him I needed time to decide what I wanted. We agreed to a trial separation. He moved into a hotel while I stayed in the apartment with Zoe. Using my own money, I found a new place for us, a bright 2-bedroom in a neighborhood I chose for myself. We moved out of the apartment his parents had held over my head for years. The freedom was intoxicating. I threw myself into my business, which continued to grow. I hired more staff, took on bigger clients, and started to build a reputation under my own name, rather than hiding behind anonymity. Articles about my work appeared in design magazines. I was invited to speak at industry conferences. Everything I had built in secret was now blossoming in the light. More importantly, I started therapy. I found a counselor who specialized in helping people recover from emotional abuse, because that is what it had been. Years of being told I was worthless. Years of having my confidence eroded. Years of believing I needed permission to exist. She helped me understand that the problem had never been me. Zoe adjusted to the changes with the resilience that children somehow possess. She asked about her grandparents occasionally, and I told her simply that they were dealing with grown-up problems. She asked about Daddy, and I told her that Mommy and Daddy were figuring out how to be the best parents they could be. She seemed satisfied with these answers, secure in the knowledge that she was loved. Harper became my rock during this period. She had always been a good friend, but witnessing what happened at the party had ignited a protective instinct in her. She checked on me daily, celebrated my wins, and sat with me during the hard moments. I made new friends too, other business owners and mothers and people who saw me for who I actually was not, who my in-laws had decided I should be. Marcus and I eventually filed for divorce. It was amicable, at least as divorces go. He had grown significantly from the man who sat silently while his parents attacked me. He took responsibility for his failures and did not try to fight for more than was fair. We agreed on shared custody of Zoe, and committed to being respectful co-parents. I did not take any of his family's money, though by that point, there was barely any left to take. The irony was not lost on me. They had spent years warning me I would leave with nothing, and in the end it was their empire that crumbled to nothing. I do not feel joy at their downfall. I thought I might after everything they put me through. But mostly, I feel relief. Relief that the truth finally came out. Relief that Zoe will grow up knowing her mother was strong. Relief that I no longer have to shrink myself to fit into their narrow definition of acceptable. The lesson I carry with me is this: the people who work hardest to make you feel small are often the ones most afraid of what you might become if you realized your own power. Diane and Richard spent years trying to convince me I was worthless because they needed to believe it. They needed me to stay small so they could feel big. Karma is not about revenge. It is about truth catching up to those who have built their lives on lies. It is about the universe correcting an imbalance. I did not bring Richard down. His own choices did that. I simply stopped letting his family bring me down with them. If you are watching this and you see yourself in any part of my story, I want you to know something. You are not what anyone else says you are. You are not defined by their cruelty or their limitations. You have the right to take up space to build your dreams, to walk away from anyone who diminishes your light. I do not know exactly what my future holds. What I know is that for the first time in a long time, that future is entirely in my own hands. And honestly, that feels like the only victory that matters. I want to ask you something. Have you ever had someone in your life who made you feel smaller than you were? How did you find your way back to yourself? Share your story in the comments, because I believe our experiences can help each other heal. If this story touched you in any way, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that they are stronger than they realize. Your support means everything to me. Thank you for being here today, for listening, for being part of this community. I am sending you so much love and strength wherever you are in your journey. Remember, you are enough exactly as you are. And sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming the person you were always meant to be.